And we are grateful and thankful to Allah that we have been guided to have the access to the knowledge of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, which is the key to paradise, which is the life of Islam. Because it is the knowledge of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah that guarantees that the person who dies with that knowledge, with that creed, with that information in their heart, believing in it, without doubting, without wavering, such a person is judged as a Muslim and he's guaranteed to enter paradise one way or the other. So the Muslim who has the correct creed, even if he falls short in some of the acts of worship, even if he falls short in doing some of the obligations, and he dies without repenting, that Muslim, enormous sinner, he will be either tortured and then he will be released from the torture and he'll enter paradise, or he will not be tortured at all and enter paradise because he will be forgiven. So this is the virtue of the knowledge of Ahlul Sunnah, is that it makes you reach paradise. We're going to continue on with the 40 Nawawiyy Hadeeth. We are on Hadith 29. And so once again, we're going to read the terms of the Hadith, and then we are going to read the meaning of it in English, and maybe talk about it a little bit, give a little bit of explanation. The 29th Hadith, عن معاذ بن جبل رضي الله عنه أنه قال: قلت يا رسول الله أخبرني بعمل يدخلني الجنة ويباعدني عن النار. قال: لقد سألت عن عظيم، وإنه ليسير على من يسره الله عليه. تعبد الله لا تشرك به شيئا، وتقيم الصلاة وتؤتي الزكاة وتصوم رمضان وتحج البيت. ثم قال: ألا أدلك على أبواب الخير؟ الصوم جنة والصدقة تطفئ الخطيئة كما يطفئ الماء النار، وصلاة الرجل في جوف الليل. ثم تلا: تتجافى جنوبهم عن المضاجع حتى بلغ يعملون. ثم قال: ألا أخبرك برأس الأمر وعموده وذروة سنامه؟ قلت: بلى يا رسول الله. قال: رأس الأمر الإسلام، وعموده الصلاة، وذروة سنامه الجهاد. ثم قال: ألا أخبرك بملاك ذلك كله؟ بملاك ذلك كله؟ فقلت: بلى يا رسول الله. فأخذ بلسانه وقال: كف عليك هذا. قلت: يا نبي الله، وإنا لمؤاخذون بما نتكلم به. فقال: ثكلتك أمك، وهل يكب الناس على وجوههم أو قال على مناخرهم إلا حصائد ألسنتهم؟ رواه الترمذي وقال حديث حسن. So this is a somewhat long hadith, and there contains in this hadith a lot of emphasis on the core elements of Islam and some other things that is very beneficial for us to learn about and for us to know about, which is that the Prophet ﷺ is emphasizing about these core elements and these things that are very important, and he is warning against many things. But the correct term is ألا أدلك ألا أخبرك بملاك ذلك كله. So instead of a fatha on the meme, it's a kasra, milaki. Let's read the meaning in English from the Rav of Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu, who said, I said, O Messenger of Allah, inform me about a deed that makes me enter paradise and keeps away from hellfire. He said, you have asked about a great matter which is easy for the one whom Allah willed to make it easy for him. Worship Allah and do not associate anything with Him. Perform the prayers, pay zakah, fast Ramadan, and perform pilgrimage to the sacred house. Thereafter he said, should I guide you to the ports of goodness? They are fasting, and it is a shield, charity, and it puts out the sin as the water puts out the fire, and the prayer of one in the middle of the night. Then he recited the ayah, تَتَجَافَى جُنُوبُهُمْ عَنِ الْمَضَاجِعِ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ خَوْفًا وَطَمَعًا وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ فَلَا تَعْلَمُ نَفْسٌ مَا أُخْفِيَ لَهُم مِّن قُرَّةِ أَعْيُنٍ جَزَاءً بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. Which means their sides depart their beds, and they make supplication to their Lord in fear and hope, and they spend for the sake of Allah out of the sustenance that we provided for them. No soul shall come to the grips with the delightful enjoyments we have reserved for them as a reward for their good doings. So he recited these ayat. Then he said, should I tell you about the head, backbone, and tip of all of that? I said, yes indeed, O Messenger of Allah. He said, the head of all of that is Islam, and its backbone is the prayers, and the tip of it is the struggle for the sake of Allah, yani the jihad. Then he said, should I tell you about what makes all of that sound and acceptable? I said, yes, indeed, O Prophet of Allah. So he held his tongue and said, protect yourself from this. I said, O Prophet of Allah, are we accountable for what we say? He said, alas, is there anything but the tongue that makes people drop on their faces, or he said their noses, in hellfire? Narrated by Tirmidhi, and he said this hadith is Hasan Sahih. So, there's a lot to be said here. And here we see again the emphasis on having the correct creed. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he started with worship Allah. So basically, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, he was asking the Prophet ﷺ for this information so that he can implement it, so that he can apply it. So the Prophet ﷺ gave him a very comprehensive answer. And he gave him the answer that he was looking for and more. So basically, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, he wants advice on what to do so that he can enter paradise without previous torture. So he said, so the Prophet ﷺ, he said, you have asked about a great matter, yani something immense, something huge, that it would be made easy for the one whom Allah Ta'ala willed for it to be easy for him. And for the one that Allah facilitated for him that matter. So basically, it is something immense, it is something huge, it is something big, it is something great, it is something grand, and Allah Ta'ala facilitates that for whomever He wills. Yani, so it would be easy for the one who Allah facilitates it for him. So the Prophet ﷺ, he began with the most important, which is to worship Allah and do not associate anything with Him. So you know, al-ibadah, it means the ultimate extent of humbleness and submission, humility and submission, as it is defined by the scholars of the Arabic language and also the scholars of Islam. Usually the scholar of Islam, he is well versed in the language itself, but there are many scholars of Islam that they were also scholars in the language, that they were linguists. like Al-Asbahani, like Al-Taqi Subki, and other than them. And so we know from their definition that worship isn't just to call out to someone. Worship isn't just to seek help from someone. Worship isn't just to ask someone for help, as some of the misguided people have interpreted worship. There's misguided people that today, they say, if you say, "Oh Messenger of Allah, help me," they believe that this person is worshiping the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Or if the person says, "Ya Rasulullah," they believe about that person that he is worshiping the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that is not the case. Yani, their interpretation of the meaning of worship is wrong. So they're ignoring the linguistic meaning and the religious meaning, and they're applying it to their own whims and fancies and desires. And they do that as a pretext to judge the Muslims as kuffar. So this is something that we need to, and it needs to be known, the person, they should understand and realize that the main thing that makes those misguided people like the Wahhabis judge the Muslims as non-Muslims is because they don't properly understand the meaning of worship. Because they think that worship means just calling out to someone or just seeking someone's help, or saying "Ya Rasulullah," or saying "Ya Jilani," or saying "Ya Hussein." That by itself is not shirk, it's not worshipping other than Allah. Or saying, "Oh Allah, I ask you to grant me good health by the status of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam." So the Wahhabis, they think that's worshipping other than Allah. Why? Because they don't understand the meaning of al-ibadah properly. That is, they think that ibadah, worship, it means something else, and they don't understand the true meaning or the real meaning, or they ignore the true meaning. They just say, "Oh, this person said he called out to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, automatically he's a kafir." And we say there's no way that's the case, because in our prayers, every single obligatory prayer, the Muslim, he says the tashahhud. He says, "At-tahiyyatu lillah, at-tahiyyatu al-mubarakatu as-salawatu at-tayyibatu lillah, as-salamu alayka ayyuhan nabi." Ayyuhan nabi means, "O Prophet." And he calling out to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's what we do in the prayer. The Muslim, he does that in the prayer. He calls out to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the prayer. And so, if it was shirk, we would not have been ordered to do that. It would not have been part of the prayer. But it's not shirk, just calling out to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Inshallah, one day we'll have a whole class about that specifically. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he started with the most important, which is to be a Muslim. And then he mentioned to perform the prayers, which is the second best good deed, performing the obligatory prayers. And then to pay the zakah, which is the obligatory charity. Yani, if you are one of the people that have to pay it, if you are one of the ones who the conditions and the Islamic parameters, that by that criteria the person is judged that they have to pay. If that applies to you, then you have to pay the zakah. If you are not among those who are obligated to pay the zakah, then this doesn't apply to you. So if it does apply to you, you pay the zakah. وَتَصُومَ Ramadan, and to fast Ramadan, and to perform the Hajj for the one who is able. And that means, among the things when we say the one who is able, it means the one who can afford it. So if the person, he can't afford it, he's not considered to be able. And he's not obligated to, let's say, like save up money so that he can become able. But if he does save up money to become able, then this is a good thing. But he's not obligated to set money aside so that he can perform the Hajj. And if he can't afford it, he's not able, he's not judged as being able. And if there is someone that stands between him and entering Mecca, unless you pay them money, then that, and you don't accept that, you don't want that, and if you said, I don't want to pay you, they won't let you in, those people are unjust, of course, and so that would make you also unable. So that's something to keep in mind in our days, just in case there was a Muslim out there who was maybe stressing out, thinking, I need to make it, I haven't made it, I haven't gone. Just know that if there is someone, a person, an individual, or an entity, or a group of people that are telling you, you can't come into the city of Mecca, or you can't enter the country unless you pay money, unless you pay someone money, then you are not able to go to the Hajj. It will be considered religiously that you're not able. Then he said, should I guide you to the gateways of goodness? And what this means is, I'm going to guide you, or would you like me to guide you? But the Prophet ﷺ is obviously going to do it. He is saying, do I show you or tell you about the different types of matters that would make you reach to increasing goodness, that would make you reach to increasing good deeds? And so then he said, as-sawmu junnah, the recommended fasting, the non-obligatory fasting, because already the obligatory fasting was mentioned, and the Summa Ramadan. But so here the Prophet ﷺ mentions fasting is a shield. And linguistically, the junnah is what protects the person from harm. And like a shield, like a shield that is used in the battlefield. So there is a shield that the person uses in the battlefield to deflect the strikes of a sword. And so fasting, the recommended fast, is like that. And the Prophet ﷺ, he used that imagery to convey that message, to paint that picture. That fasting, the recommended fast, it protects you. And it protects you from sins in this life. And so it would protect you from the hellfire in the hereafter. And it's narrated by Imam Ahmad, attributed to the Prophet ﷺ. Fasting is a shield from the fire, like the shield of one of you in the battle. And it means it protects you just as the shield in the battlefield protects you. And so Nasa'i, he also narrated, fasting is a shield as long as you don't breach it. Meaning, by committing ghibah and talebearing and the like among words and actions. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he said, as-sadaqatu, the recommended charity, that it erases the small sin that is not related to the rights of the humans. It means that the traces of that sin are erased and removed. As for the sins that they are related to the rights of humans, the giving the charity does not remove them and does not void them. So basically, when the Muslim, he gives in charity, and the recommended charity besides the zakat, the obligatory zakat. When the Muslim gives in charity, the recommended charity, if he had committed small sins that are not related to violating another human being's rights, then by giving that charity, those small sins that are not related to violating the rights of another human would be erased. So, this is something that for those that have money, or for someone who they want to get their rank raised or they want the small sins to be erased, they should give in charity. Then the Prophet ﷺ mentioned praying at night. That praying at night, the recommended prayer, it erases the small sin that is not related to the rights of the human. And the best of that recommended prayer at night is the witr. And praying the witr is the best of the prayers after the obligatory prayers. And also, it's narrated in another hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said, عليكم بقيام الليل فإنه دأب الصالحين قبلكم وإن قيام الليل قربة إلى الله عز وجل ومنهاة عن الإثم وتكفير للسيئات ومطردة للداء عن الجسد. And also has been narrated, attributed to the Prophet ﷺ, أقرب ما يكون الرب من العبد في جوف الليل الآخر فإن استطعت أن تكون ممن يذكر الله تلك الساعة فكن. So these are two narrations that show the merit of praying at night. The first one is what is narrated by Tirmidhi, that he said that the Prophet ﷺ encouraged the Muslims to pray at night. He said, adhere to praying at night, because it is the habit of the righteous before you. And indeed, praying at night is a great act of worship to Allah, and it is something that prevents sin, and it is something that deletes these small sins, and it is a deflector of sickness from the body. And another narration, it says the closest that the slave would be to the acceptance of Allah would be in the second half of the night. So if you're able to be among those who mention Allah at that time, then be. So how do you get the virtue? The virtue of praying at night, it occurs by praying 2 rak'ahs. And the best of it is the way that Prophet Dawood alayhi salam prayed the night, at night. He would sleep half of the night, then he would pray for a third of the night, and then he will sleep for a sixth of the night. And by doing that, obviously, he would be rested for the Fajr prayer. Then the Prophet ﷺ recited the ayah that we mentioned, تَتَجَافَى جُنُوبُهُمْ عَنِ الْمَضَاجِعِ, meaning that they leave out sleeping. يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ, it means they worship their Lord. خَوْفًا, it means out of fear of His punishment. وَطَمَعًا, it means and seeking His reward and His acceptance and His mercy. وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ, and they donate from what they have been provided. And then it says, فَلَا تَعْلَمُ نَفْسٌ مَا أُخْفِيَ لَهُم مِّن قُرَّةِ أَعْيُنٍ جَزَاءً بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. So the Prophet ﷺ, he recited that verse until he reached Ya'malun. And it means that the one who gets up at night to pray and leaves out sleeping and its pleasure and gives precedence to praying those recommended prayers, what he is hoping from his Lord and his recompense would be something that is mentioned in the verse, فَلَا تَعْلَمُ نَفْسٌ مَا أُخْفِيَ لَهُم مِّن قُرَّةِ أَعْيُنٍ جَزَاءً بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. So basically it's mentioning that there is a special reward that is reserved for the righteous Muslims in the hereafter in paradise, a type of reward that nobody has ever thought about it. So obviously the person, when they're praying at night, they need to make sure that they have the khushu', that they have the reverence for Allah Ta'ala, that they are doing it with sincerity to Allah Ta'ala and not out of insincerity, and for there not to be any sin in his, for there not to be any forbidden matter in his stomach. Because if there is forbidden food in his stomach, at the time that he is praying, he won't get any reward. And for the place that he is praying to be also halal. So when we mention these things, it's taken into consideration, it's understood that it is with the conditions. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he said, should I guide you, or should I tell you about the head of all that, and its backbone, and its tip, and or the summit, if you want to say. So then the Prophet ﷺ, he informed him that the most important matter of all that, the foundation, is to be Muslim, to have the correct belief. And the backbone of it is the prayer. And so, and that the tip of it is al-jihad. And so the Prophet ﷺ made it very clear that the most important thing is to be Muslim. The second important thing is to do the obligatory prayers and the importance and the high status of jihad. And then the Prophet ﷺ warned against the person not taking care of their tongue and not protecting their tongue from sins. And that the person, they should be careful what they say. So at that point, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, he was a bit surprised and he wasn't aware that the person is held accountable for what they say. So the Prophet ﷺ informed him, and he emphasized it, made that point be known.
Okay, sir.
And Allah Ta'ala knows best. Yani that the person, if he doesn't watch his tongue, he might say things, he might commit many sins, he might commit many sins with his tongue. So the person should be careful what they say. The 30th hadith, عن أبي ثعلبة الخشني جرثوم بن ناشد رضي الله عنه عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال إن الله تعالى فرض فرائض فلا تضيعوها وحد حدودا فلا تعتدوها وحرم أشياء فلا تنتهكوها وسكت عن أشياء رحمة لكم غير نسيان فلا تبحثوا عنها. Hadith al-Hasan Rawahu Daraqutni. The 30th hadith from the route of Abu Tha'laba al-Khushani, Julthum, the son of Nashid, may Allah Ta'ala accept his deeds, from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, who said, Allah Ta'ala decreed obligatory matters, so do not do them, do not fall short in doing them, and set parameters, so do not violate them, and decreed unlawful matters, so do not commit them, and left matters unmentioned about, unforgetful, as a mercy to you, so do not fetch them. This hadith is Hasan, narrated by Daraqutni and others. So here the Prophet ﷺ is letting us know that the things that Allah Ta'ala made an obligation, that we are obligated to do them, that we should be careful about falling short in them. And there are things that Allah Ta'ala made forbidden, and things that Allah Ta'ala limits, that Allah Ta'ala set lines, that Allah Ta'ala made that they cannot be crossed. And that there are certain matters that Allah Ta'ala did not reveal explicitly about it being obligatory or sinful or neutral or disliked or recommended. Yani as a mercy to the creations, yani from the aspect that these things were not made forbidden upon them. And so we should not and so what would happen sometimes during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is that before, there's certain things that before they were not forbidden, but then someone during the time of the Prophet ﷺ asked about it, and it was revealed as forbidden. And so what it means is there are certain matters that the origin of it is that they are neutral. As for after the time of the Prophet ﷺ, looking for some religious text or seeking the judgment of something that there is no explicit text about it, so this would be searched for, and he's seeking the proof and the evidence from the religious text. This is something good and okay, and that is the duty or the job of the mujtahids. Now the other way, the other thing, the other category is searching for the acute, far-fetched differences that have no effect in the Islamic law. And this is sometimes called waswasa. This is not praised nor accepted. Rather, the praised deduction or the praised looking into is what the companions did and what is in line with that. And the wisdom behind that and there is a wisdom behind the person not thinking up hypothetical scenarios or thinking up acute differences between certain cases and certain details, because the person then he might be overwhelmed by the whispers of the shaitan. And there is an indication in the hadith to leave out seeking the judgments of cases of things that did not happen, the hypothetical scenarios, to the extent that some scholars, they prevented asking about certain things that would happen until they happened. And to not ask about something that hasn't happened yet. No. And so that last part in English, so do not fetch them, and so do not seek them. And don't go and search in a way that is dispraised or in a way that would lead to the person being overwhelmed by whispers, or what if this happened, what if that happened. The person should just stick to finding the judgment of things that are occurring or that occurred to him or that something he wants to engage in, and not think of hypothetical scenarios. Here's an important benefit that's good for us to know. If there is an entity that originally is halal, and then we are not sure if something haram entered it or not, we're not obligated to search, like the cheese. And it's narrated from a great scholar, his name is Abdul Razzaq, in his Musannaf, from the route of the son of Umar, when he was asked about the cheese that is made by the fire worshippers, and he said, what I find in the Muslims' marketplace, I buy it, and I don't ask about it. So, the first part of this benefit is, if there's something that's originally halal, originally it's a halal entity, and we're doubting about whether or not something haram entered it, we don't have to search, we don't have to investigate. As for what its origin was forbidden, and an entity that its origin was forbidden, then it remains on that origin until it is known about it that it has become halal. Like the edible animal is forbidden to eat until it is certain that it has been slaughtered. So it's not known if it has been slaughtered, it is not halal to consume it. And it is forbidden to consume it while doubting about if it was slaughtered or not, and that is by consensus. The 31st hadith, عن أبي العباس سهل بن سعد الساعدي رضي الله عنه أنه قال جاء رجل إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال يا رسول الله دلني على عمل إذا عملته أحبني الله وأحبني الناس فقال ازهد في الدنيا يحبك الله وازهد فيما عند الناس يحبك الناس. حديث حسن رواه ابن ماجه وغيره بأسانيد حسنة. The 31st turn away from the permissible pleasures and the permissible luxuries of this life. Turn away from what, the people, let's say the material things that the people want. And busy yourself Dunya, it means do not be attached to the worldly luxuries and pleasures, the permissible luxuries and pleasures. And do not crave what other people have, and do not seek what other people have, and the people will love you. Because many people, they would perceive such a thing or such a person like as a threat to the things that they're attached to. But if they know that you are not interested in what they have or the things that they are overprotective about or protective about, then they're going to feel safe, they're going to feel comfortable, they're not going to feel threatened, they're not going to feel that this person, he wants what I have. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. And if you, I guess, stay away from money and prestige, the people will love you. Because the one who competes with the person over what he is attached to, he hates that person. And the one who does not stand in his way from what he's attached to and what he loves, then he likes that person. We have time for one more, I think. The 32nd hadith. عن أبي سعيد سعد بن مالك بن سنان الخدري رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: لا ضرر ولا ضرار. حديث حسن رواه ابن ماجه والدارقطني وغيرهما مسندا، ورواه مالك في الموطأ عن عمرو بن يحيى عن أبيه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم مرسلا، فأسقط أبا سعيد وله طرق يقوي بعضها بعضا. In English, from the route of Abu Sa'id, Sa'ad, the son of Malik, the son of Sinan al-Khudri, may Allah Ta'ala accept his deeds, who said that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, it is unlawful for one to harm another, and it is unlawful to harm one another. This hadith is Hasan and narrated by Ibn Majah and Daraqutni and others with a Musnad chain of narration. The chain goes back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Malik narrated it in the Muwatta in a Mursal chain of narration from the route of Amr, the son of Yahya, from his father to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and skipped Abu Sa'id, and the hadith has routes of narration which strengthens one another. Yeah, so even though it's Mursal, even though that it's mentioned without, by skipping one of the names of the narrators, still this hadith has other narrations that confirm it. Yeah, so it's not like a singular odd narration. And so the meaning is that it's not permissible for the person to harm another person, and it is not permissible to harm one another. And so the statements are synonymous. And it's for emphasis.